It's a big center, around 50 faculty, 100 students. We have about 40, 50 collaborators, international collaborators. So this is, it is a movement.
So the science of information, broadly construed, is, if you think of how we've gone, we've gone from a point where we were largely a data-starved science to a point now that we have tremendous amounts of data. And data-driven science is sort of becoming a major paradigm in science. So you ask the question, how do you go from these terabytes, petabytes, exabytes of data to something that actually tells us what's inside this data, which I would call information, and from there to something that I would call actionable knowledge. What would you do if you knew exactly what was in the data in a way that you could actually make use of it? And I would classify or characterize this entire process of going from data to what's contained in the data to what is actionable inside data as a science of information.
So the more technology progresses, the more relevant information theory becomes to the practical world. So what we're trying to do here is advance the information theory in the Science of Information Center not by applying it just to more and more complicated models and so on, like many people do, but trying to revisit some of the fundamental paradigms of the theory and view them in a different way. And also there is a synergistic effort of getting together people from many different disciplines and do cross-pollination.
So what impact did Shannon have on the science of information, past, present, and future? His work was so beautiful in taking a complex set of problems and distilling them down into something that was captured the essence of those problems, yet what could be solved in a very elegant and intuitive way. And his work, which took place in the 1940s, at that time technology was not capable of coming anywhere close to what he was predicting that we could do. And so I think one of the other beautiful aspects of Shannon's theory is the fact that it wasn't tied to a particular technology, because that dates it, right? I mean, if you say you build a system or you develop results for technology at a particular point in time, technology evolves very quickly. What Shannon did is said, whatever the technology limits are, this is the fundamental limit on what you can achieve. And so I think that inspired many researchers to look at problems in that way, to think about them broadly and abstractly and elegantly, the way that Shannon did. But there are some limitations to Shannon's theory. He didn't live forever, and I think that those limitations in some cases have prevented the application of his results to practical problems. And I think that's one of the things that the center is trying to do in expanding this theory of information, is to retain the beauty and elegance and simplicity of Shannon's approach to these kinds of problems, but bring in more of the practical constraints so that we can get fundamental limits within those constraints that will be applicable to practical problems.
So here in this lab, in collaboration with Todd, Coleman, and Verdu, who is my neuroscience advisor, we look into how we have these very simple animals that have a very simple brain, and they have a set of behaviors. They're not as complex as humans that have many behaviors. They have a very finite set of behaviors, and we try to understand how their simple brains coordinate that behavior. We have this idea that the animal is trying to solve or optimize his cost function. So we are using both Markov processes and optimization theories, some theories in that, so that we can model the animal's behavior. And what we want to do is observe both normal animals and then have an addicted animal and see how that cost function changes. So if the animal is going around, and we work with sea slugs, they are natural predators. And so if we can alter its behavior through addiction, we want to understand how that cost function is changing, how the neural processes are changing. So that's when we are bridging electrical engineering within like the math of Markov processes and inverse optimal control and control theory with neuroscience and neurobiology.
So we focus on a protein that is important for endocytosis, and we see how that protein is absolutely required for the cells to survive and so on. So yeast cells are a diverse population. So even when something is wrong with them, you need to look at thousands of cells to be sure that it's really going on. Because even in normal cell, you'll find one cell out of, say, 5,000 in which something is wrong, but that's not really relevant. So in order to do that, we need to look at these thousands of cells and then look at the perimeter, sort of outline their periphery and see and do some image analysis, and that takes a lot of time. And so we feel that if there was an automated approach to this, then we could do it much faster. And not only that, so since we're doing this manually, there might be some information that we're missing, which an automated system would not miss. So it would become more information rich. It's really exciting to do experiments, just to be the first one to know that, oh, this is a discovery I made today, and then share it with everybody.
But we want those students to also understand what's going on in the science of information, how it's relevant to what they're studying in their own major, and then bring it back to their majors and apply it there. So in our in my thinking, you're not just a biologist when you graduate from a place like Bryn Mawr. If you go through this program that we have, then you're actually a biology major with a computer science or a computational minor, having studied some of the science of information, and you bring that back to your field of biology, and there's bioinformatics and biostatistics and just amazing stuff going on. And so I think we're educating a new breed of students, in my mind, that are going to be head and shoulders above some of the traditional programs.